Peppa Pig's house always seemed peaceful at night, but something sinister watched from the darkness outside. George lay in his bed, clutching Mr. Dinosaur tightly. A terrifying shadow appeared at his bedroom window. The green figure waved slowly at frightened George. Evil Shrek smiled with glowing red eyes menacingly. George trembled under his warm blanket covers. The monster gestured for him to come outside. Night after night, Shrek returned faithfully watching. George watched in terror from his bed. George ran to Peppa's room, crying desperately. She rolled her eyes at his silly stories. At breakfast, George told his worried parents. Daddy Pig laughed at the wild imagination. Mummy Pig patted George's head, gently smiling. Everyone thought he was just dreaming nightmares. Peppa teased George about his imaginary monster. She called him a silly little brother. Grandpa Pig visited for Sunday dinner together. George begged him to believe the truth. Even wise Grandpa shook his head sadly. Nobody took George's warnings seriously anymore. The waving continued every single dark night. Shrek's smile grew wider each time. George stopped telling anyone about the visits. Fear consumed his tiny pig heart completely. Dark circles appeared under George's tired eyes. He barely slept or ate anymore. Peppa noticed George acting very strange lately, but she ignored his frightened behavior completely. One stormy night, Shrek beckoned more urgently. His red eyes burned brighter than ever before. George felt an invisible force pulling him. He walked toward the bedroom window slowly. The window opened by itself, mysteriously wide. Cold wind rushed into the room violently. George climbed onto the windowsill very slowly. Shrek's hand reached out for him eagerly. Morning came, but George wasn't in bed. His bed remained empty and cold forever. Peppa found Mr. Dinosaur abandoned on floor. The toy pointed toward the open window. The family searched everywhere, desperately calling his name. But George had vanished without trace. Police found only muddy footprints outside house. They led into the dark forest depths. The house fell silent without little George. His empty chair haunted every meal sadly. Sometimes at night, Peppa hears strange sounds, someone waving at her bedroom window now. Peppa's house always seemed like the safest place. But nobody suspected the dark secrets of the mysterious seashell. Granny Pig arrives with the mysterious smile. In her hands, a large seashell shimmers with strange light. Peppa joyfully claps her hands, receiving gift. The seashell seems ordinary, but something about it frightens. Granny carefully puts the seashell to ear. Ocean sounds fill the room with sinister whispers and echoes. The family gathers around the amazing find. Nobody notices the red pulsating light growing stronger. Daddy Pig takes the seashell and nods. In ocean sounds, there's strange laughter getting louder. Mummy Pig places the seashell on shelf. Red light becomes brighter every passing minute, dangerously. George touches the seashell with little hand. Sound transforms into sinister whispers of unknown language. Night falls peacefully. Family goes to sleep. The seashell glows bright red light alone in darkness. Midnight strikes on the old clock. The seashell cracks loudly. Terrible gurgling sounds emerge. A deep crack appears with loud crunch. Red light bursts out violently, illuminating living room. From cracked seashell emerges yellow hand. Sharp claws scratch wooden floor, leaving deep grooves. Evil SpongeBob climbs out completely from prison. Eyes burn with red fire, teeth became sharp fangs. Monster examines house with hungry expression. Sinister laughter echoes around, awakening terror in sleeping hearts. Peppa wakes up from strange sound. She quietly goes downstairs, not suspecting terrible danger. Evil SpongeBob turns with wide smile. Red glowing eyes hypnotize little pig, depriving will to resist. Monster extends hand toward Peppa obediently. Her eyes become completely empty. Smile disappears forever. Family wakes up without finding Peppa. They search entire house desperately, find only broken seashell. Evil SpongeBob stands with Peppa outside. Now she's his faithful servant with empty glassy eyes. Monster looks at house planning horrors. His collection of living puppets must be filled with victims. Red eyes glow menacingly in darkness. He waits patiently to take remaining family members. The house will never be same. Seashell was only beginning of horror consuming all who approach. The Pig family house stood peacefully on Muddy Puddle Lane, surrounded by cheerful neighbors. But the yellow house next door held a dark secret that would soon shatter their world. SpongeBob had been their neighbor for months, always smiling and waving. The family thought he was just a harmless, funny character from the sea. Peppa and George often saw him through the window, giggling strangely. His wide grin never seemed to fade, even when no one was around. Mummy Pig found his constant cheerfulness a bit odd but charming. She often invited him over for tea and biscuits with the family. Daddy Pig enjoyed SpongeBob's silly jokes and underwater stories. He never noticed the strange glint in his neighbor's dark eyes. One rainy afternoon, SpongeBob knocked on their front door. His smile seemed wider than usual, almost stretching beyond his face. Mummy Pig welcomed him inside, offering warm tea and cookies. SpongeBob's eyes darted around the house, studying every corner and shadow. The family gathered in the living room for their usual chat. SpongeBob sat quietly, his grin becoming more unsettling by the minute. Daddy Pig excused himself to get more biscuits from the kitchen. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, then suddenly stopped completely. Minutes passed, but Daddy Pig never returned to the room. Mummy Pig called his name, but only silence answered back. SpongeBob's smile grew impossibly wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. His eyes began to glow with an eerie, unnatural light. Peppa and George huddled close to Mummy Pig, sensing danger. SpongeBob stood up slowly, his body seeming to stretch and distort. The family searched the entire house, calling for Daddy Pig. Every room was empty, as if he had simply vanished. SpongeBob followed them, his footsteps making wet, squishy sounds. His laughter echoed through the halls, cold and menacing. Mummy Pig found Daddy Pig's glasses on the kitchen floor. They were the only trace left of him in the house. SpongeBob's true form began to show through his disguise. His yellow skin turned darker, and his holes became deep black voids. The family ran to the neighbors for help, but nobody believed them. SpongeBob appeared normal to everyone else, still smiling his innocent smile. Night fell and strange sounds came from SpongeBob's house next door. Wet, bubbling noises and muffled voices echoed through the walls. Peppa pressed her ear to the wall between the houses. She could hear Daddy Pig's voice, but it sounded distant and hollow. The next morning, SpongeBob waved cheerfully from his garden. He acted as if nothing had happened, his smile never wavering. Mummy Pig watched him through the window, tears in her eyes. She knew Daddy Pig was somewhere in that yellow house next door. SpongeBob's house remained silent during the day, but at night it pulsed. Strange lights flickered in the windows, and shadows moved behind the curtains. The family never saw Daddy Pig again, but sometimes they heard him. His voice would call to them through the walls, begging them to stay away. The forest near Peppa's house always seemed friendly during the day, but as darkness fell, strange whispers began to echo between the ancient trees. Peppa and her friends loved playing in the meadow at the forest edge. They never ventured deeper where shadows grew thick and unfamiliar sounds lurked. Grandpa Pig often warned the children about the old legends, tales of a green creature with glowing red eyes that haunted the darkest part of the woods. One evening, George noticed something unusual while looking out his bedroom window. A pair of red lights glowed from between the distant trees. The next morning, strange footprints appeared in the garden. They were much larger than Daddy Pig's and seemed to lead toward the forest. At breakfast, Peppa heard Mummy and Daddy Pig whispering about missing vegetables from the garden. Something had been taking them during the night. During playtime at school, Pedro Pony claimed he saw a massive green figure watching from the trees. Nobody believed his frightened words. That afternoon, while Peppa and George played in the yard, they heard rustling from the bushes. A low, rumbling laugh made them freeze in terror. Two glowing red eyes peered at them from the foliage. They disappeared when Mummy Pig called the children inside for dinner. That night, strange shadows moved across Peppa's bedroom wall. The shapes didn't match anything that should be outside her window. The next day, Susie Sheep found a strange, muddy handprint on her bicycle. It was enormous and had an odd greenish tint that wouldn't wash away. Daddy Pig decided to investigate the forest disturbances. He took his flashlight and promised to return before dark fell completely. Hours passed and Daddy Pig didn't come home. Mummy Pig tried calling his phone, but only static answered from the other end. Peppa overheard Mummy Pig talking to Police Officer Panda. The officer promised to search the forest at first light. That night, a terrible storm raged outside. Lightning revealed a hulking silhouette standing motionless in the garden, watching the house. Morning came with no sign of Daddy Pig. The police search party found only his broken flashlight at the edge of the darkest part of the forest. Grandpa Pig arrived looking grave and carrying an ancient book. He spoke of old protection spells that might keep the family safe. While Mummy Pig and Grandpa prepared the house, Peppa noticed George staring out the window. He pointed silently toward the forest edge. There stood a massive green ogre with twisted horns and glowing red eyes. Shrek smiled with too many teeth and held Daddy Pig's muddy hat. The creature left something on the doorstep before vanishing into the trees. It was a crude map drawn in mud, showing a path deep into the forest. That night, strange music drifted from the woods. It sounded like a flute playing an enchanting melody that made everyone feel strangely sleepy. Peppa woke at midnight to find George walking trance-like toward the open front door. His eyes were glassy and unfocused as he moved. Grandpa Pig caught George just before he stepped outside. The little pig woke confused, saying the music had called him to follow the forest path. The family huddled together as the music grew louder. Outside, countless red eyes watched from the darkness, waiting for someone to answer their hypnotic call. The peaceful village where Peppa Pig lived had always been safe and cheerful, but deep in the dark forest, something ancient and terrible had awakened from its slumber. Strange roars echoed through the trees at night, frightening all the animals. The forest creatures whispered about a green giant with glowing red eyes. Peppa heard the grown-ups talking about the mysterious newcomer in hushed voices. They said he was different from anyone they had ever seen. Daddy Pig dismissed the rumors as silly forest tales and legends, but Mummy Pig noticed how the birds had stopped singing near the woods. George found strange, massive footprints near their garden fence one morning. The prints were deeper than any animal they knew could make. Grandpa Pig warned the family to stay away from the forest. But curiosity burned bright in Peppa's adventurous heart, stronger than any warning. The family decided to venture into the woods to meet their neighbor. They packed a picnic basket, thinking it would be a friendly visit. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller and darker. The cheerful bird song faded into an eerie, unnatural silence. A terrible smell filled the air, like rotting vegetables and swamp water. Mummy Pig suggested they should turn back, but Daddy Pig insisted they continue. They found a crude hut made of mud and twisted branches. Smoke rose from a chimney and strange shadows moved behind dirty windows. The door creaked open, revealing a massive green figure with burning eyes. His smile showed rows of sharp, yellowed teeth that gleamed menacingly. Shrek's voice was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder before a storm. He invited the family inside with gestures that seemed almost too eager. The interior of the hut was dark and filled with mysterious objects. Bones hung from the ceiling, and strange potions bubbled in dirty cauldrons. Peppa felt uneasy as Shrek's red eyes followed their every movement. George hid behind Mummy Pig, sensing something was terribly wrong with their host. Shrek offered them food that looked spoiled and smelled awful. When they politely declined, his friendly expression began to change into something sinister. The family tried to leave, but the door had mysteriously locked itself. The windows were too high, and Shrek blocked their only escape route. One by one, the family members began to feel drowsy and confused. The air in the hut seemed to grow thicker and harder to breathe. Peppa's vision blurred as she watched her family members collapse around her. Shrek's laughter echoed through the hut, cold and terrifying. The next morning, the village noticed the pig family hadn't returned home. Search parties combed the forest but found no trace of them. Days passed and the family's house stood empty and silent. Their car remained in the driveway, covered with fallen leaves and morning dew. Weeks later, hikers reported seeing strange lights in Shrek's part of the forest. But when they investigated, they found only an empty clearing. The hut had vanished without a trace, leaving only scorched earth behind. No one ever saw the pig family or the mysterious green stranger again. Local children now avoid the forest, especially when darkness falls.